Hey, hello
Hey, Ivan.
everyone. Hi Jared, hi Kevin, hi Harneet. It's nice to see you
Hello.
all.
Same here, Ishan.
Nice. So, uh, hi Jared, hi Kevin. Welcome to the show, and thanks for joining us today. So, to talk about the ServiceNow Vault and how it can help everyone around our customers, our partners in the ServiceNow ecosystem. Nice.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you
For having
thank you so
us.
much for having us.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah, Kevin and I have been talking a lot about this lately. I actually got to hang out with him a couple weeks ago at the Knowledge Conference in the
nice.
platform security booth. And so we just have been kind of talking about this nonstop.
Yep.
So yeah, let's, I do have a few slides
Did
here.
either of you
Help
stop
us
by the booth,
see.
by the way?
Yeah.
Like Harneet, didn't you have like 3 presentations at Knowledge or something like that?
Yeah, I had a couple of them. I may have crossed the booth, but yeah, I can't remember if we
Okay.
already had that conversation. There's so much of knowledge. I've got like a big a notepad created where I've just noted all the points, everybody that I met, and everything that I learned. I think yeah, I've slowly started sharing that on my blog as well. But yeah, I mean, yeah,
Sean, were you
this year the
there?
knowledge was
No, I couldn't make it this time, but I'll most likely be there next year. So I'll catch up with you, Kevin, Jared. Yeah, I was there last year, so yeah, this time around had some personal commitments, so couldn't make it. But yeah, I had all the FOMO going on. I was just following up with LinkedIn, all the posts that were there. So
That was a
looking at
flood.
what everyone is doing. So yeah,
So our sirens are off because we're Blue Earth County
Okay.
for weather.
all
Do
right.
I know yet or no?
I don't know.
Okay.
Just chill.
All right.
Cool.
Sorry. We've got an event going on here, and so there's a weather event that I may have to go hide in my basement. So I live in Minnesota, and there's a tornado warning going on. I got sirens going off around me right now, and so I apologize to everyone if I have to jump off of the stream. So
No problem. Well, yeah, should we do intros before we share out some slides? And
sure.
Yes.
okay.
So let's start with you, Jared. Let's do a quick round of introductions.
Yay, thank you for having me today. I'm Jarod Mundt. I work in the product success team here at ServiceNow, focusing on all things platform security. And so recently I've been doing a lot of talking about the various Vault products, and we'll go into the 6 different areas here in a bit, but thank you for having me.
Nice.
And I'm Kevin Thompson. I lead one of the product management teams in the platform privacy and security group here at ServiceNow. And when I introduce myself, I like to say that I'm kind of a security therapist because I spend a lot of my time talking to people about their problems, right? What are you doing with ServiceNow? What do you want to do with ServiceNow? What kind of data do you have in there? What kind of systems are you integrating with? What are the rules for how that data needs to be protected in your organization? And ultimately, I try to guide people towards finding solutions. But I also spend a lot of time just listening to them talk about their pain.
Hi, that sound interesting.
Yeah, I
Kevin.
really like the ServiceNow therapist
Yeah,
as the title. I'm going to
Yeah.
refer to
Security
that.
therapist. I don't know if
security.
I'll go with security therapist. I don't think I'm quite at a ServiceNow therapist yet.
Oh,
But
sorry, security.
yeah.
Cool. Over to you,
Nice.
Shan.
All right. So yeah, myself Ishan. I'm a certified technical architect working with EY, and have been in the ecosystem for quite a while now. I'm also a 3 times developer MVP for my community contributions, and yeah, love working with ServiceNow, and that's why I'm here today. So yeah, over to you, Haneet.
Thanks, Ishan. Again, very excited to have you, Jared, and Kevin on the show. My name is Harneetsingh Sital. I'm a 2-time MVP. I've been at Knowledge 2 times. I've spoken both the times. I've got over 8 years of experience on the platform, and at the moment, I'm working with Accenture as a technical architect. And yeah, really looking forward to learn a bit more about ServiceNow Vault.
Yes. All right. So let's start off, with the first question that like I have in mind is what is ServiceNow Vault? So Jared and Kevin.
Cool. Yeah, I have, Kevin, do you want to jump in? I will share out and jump
Sure.
ahead to that particular slide for us.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
So
Nice.
yeah, I'll jump ahead into Vault.
Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
Okay.
All right. Jarod, were you going to talk about this one? I forgot. Or was I going to introduce it?
Jump right in. I will interrupt you if I spot something interesting.
Okay. So Vault, when we talk about security at ServiceNow, I think it's always one of the important things that comes up is kind of the question of who's responsible for security here anyways, right? I mean, on the one hand, you could say, well, ServiceNow, this is your application running on your servers in your data center, so you're responsible for securing this. And then I could say, well, yeah, but it's your customer data, it's your oversight, so you're responsible for it. And really, the answer is that we have this shared responsibility around security.
Mm.
And so we have the things that we do out of the box, or I shouldn't say out of the box, but behind the scenes. So things like disaster recovery, for example, or even things like doing background checks on our employees and that sort of thing, right? Those are what I call those the invisibles, the things that we just do. And you look at our audit reports, we have third-party auditors that verify that we're doing these things. And then you get into the configurables, and those are things that we provide out of the box for you, but I do need you to do some of the work. So when you think about things like access control lists or configuring single sign-on, for example, these would be things that you're not paying more for those, but we can't do that for you to do the configuration around that. And with between those two things, you can have a very secure instance of ServiceNow, and you can meet the security needs for the majority of our customers are met with that. We do have some customers, though, who work in heavily regulated industries, and they have additional requirements beyond what's offered out of the box. So Vault is a security enhancement suite that delivers advanced privacy and compliance controls, and it empowers organizations to safeguard sensitive business critical applications on the platform by providing additional layers of security beyond what's already available. And so we've got this little spinny wheel diagram here to kind of talk about Vault is a bundle of products. So platform encryption, for example, is a bundle of other products. Data privacy is a bundle of other products. So Vault is this all-encompassing term for these additional add-on security enhancement products that some of our customers need in order to meet whatever regulatory requirements they're in based on the industry that they're in, or maybe where they are geographically in the world, or even sometimes just your own security department says, in order for us to consider putting this kind of stuff into the cloud, we need additional controls beyond what you have now. So you think about a customer, for example, who might have, say, ITOM, and they did an evaluation. They decided, okay, this is what we need security-wise in order to use ITOM. And now we're considering also moving into HR. And the security department says, okay, well, that's a different kind of data than ITOM. And that needs to be protected differently. We have additional rules around that, for example. So that's kind of where ServiceNow Vault comes into play.
Yeah, and let me back up a couple of slides to just do a high level, whether we're talking about Vault, with which is some of our premium product add-ons, the focus of all the ServiceNow security offerings, whether it's like security attributes, data filtration, ACLs, and on, some of the newer things that are coming out. You probably saw on LinkedIn the deny unless ACLs that was part of one of the keynotes. Yeah, I'm really excited about that product. So, but whether we're talking about the out-of-box products or the premium products, the mission is the same, right? We're trying to, like Kevin said, whatever the data is, whether we're talking about HR data or customer data, we want to make sure that data gets to the right people at the right time. And also this important bit, I really like this fifth column here, and be able to prove it right after the fact, be able to during UAT, or whether your governance and auditors want to log in and prove that. So that's being built in to every product that we are talking about today, and also every platform security feature across the whole platform.
And that's really important to those customers that are working in healthcare or legal or finance, manufacturing, is they've got some strenuous audit requirements, honestly, that get put onto them. And generally in the world of audit, if you can't prove that you did something, then you didn't do it. So for us, it's important that our security tools are enabling you to be able to show an auditor, for example, yes, we are rotating our encryption keys. Our standard is we rotate encryption keys every 6 months. Here's the evidence that we did that.
Yeah. So on the first like we had the log export. Is that around the same lines, Kevin? I mean, the auditing or having those logs around when those keys are rotating or
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can get that, I think, from log export service, but we also just have a key transaction screen in the UI too that you could use to
nice.
show like here's where the key transactions have taken place.
Right.
We have an encryption key. It was rotated back in January. Where did that key come from? Did ServiceNow generate that key, or did we bring our own key, depending on what our
Nice.
requirements are? So, however it is that you need to, to demonstrate that, you have to have that's the evidence then that you can provide to an auditor around the key rotation, for example. So Jarod, here you've kind of got this slide up talking about that shared responsibility model. And that's kind of what I was talking about earlier of like, who's even responsible for securing my data in ServiceNow? And really the answer is both of us, right? Both ServiceNow and the customer.
Right.
And so this is kind of looking at that model of things like, for example, like we have a secure SDLC process to make sure that the code that we're putting out is high quality and secure, but then you can write custom code. So you also need to have some secure SDLC processes to make sure that you're producing quality code as well. What do you think? Oh, go ahead, Jarod.
The last thing I want to say before we jump into the specific products is one question I get a lot is, how long does it take to turn on Vault? When can I install Vault? And so it's not just a single thing. It's a collaboration. It's a people, process, technology conversation. It's a collection of processes. So we don't have a exact order for you to install them. It's going to be based on your requirements. So we will present them in a particular order, but really it's up to you what your priorities are. It's like anything else in the security space. It's not binary. It's not on or off. It's a sliding scale. And so this will help you get to where you want to be. To meet.
Yeah, I don't, and I would say, before we get into that, I don't necessarily have an opinion on you should implement this piece of Vault before this other one. I mean, sometimes I do. But when we talk about security in general, whether, not just the paid editions, but just security in general, I do have some opinions there. We have 3 tools in particular that I try to bring to people's attention. So that would be things like Security Center, which gives you a benchmark of where your security is today and a roadmap for how you can level up your security. And we have Access Analyzer, which helps you figure out who has access to what and why. Yeah. And then Log Export Service, you were mentioning that earlier, that helps you gather real-time forensic quality logging of the events in your ServiceNow instance. And you can use that for like performance monitoring, trending analysis, detecting security incidents, and that kind of thing. So I am generally of the opinion that if you're not making use of those 3 included tools that I just mentioned, that really is your first stop. And then after that, now we can start talking about Vault in particular, right? So
exactly.
Should we start with platform encryption?
I like that. Yes. I think that's a great place to start.
Okay, so platform encryption, this allows you to demonstrate to auditors that you follow industry best practices for encrypting sensitive data and rotating keys. And this is a layer of protection that helps guard against things like supply chain attacks or credential leakage or potential data leakage from something like generative AI. So this was kind of the example I gave of like a CSM customer can show that they've encrypted everything in their instance and that they're rotating keys on a regular basis. And they can even demonstrate how they're keeping some of the data protected from even their own admins who might not need access to that data. So I mentioned that platform encryption is a bundle, or that Vault is a bundle with bundles in it. Platform encryption is one of those bundles that consists of two pieces, cloud encryption and column level encryption. And cloud encryption, that's really easy to understand. That is just data at rest encryption of the entire storage volume that your ServiceNow instance is using, with the ability to bring your own key and rotate that key as you see, as you need. So this is your basic, like, is everything in my ServiceNow instance encrypted? There's your answer.
Yeah,
Beyond that is go ahead, Jared. Sorry.
Oh, from the implementation perspective, just about everyone does this first, because it is, you submit a change request via support, and our data center automation people move your instance over to some new hardware. And so it is a quick win for platform encryption or Vault customers.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. And the other the disk encryption and also are accounted in the same platform encryption, I guess.
Similar,
Right.
right?
Yeah. Go ahead,
We're
Jared.
getting rid of that, those database encryption, which is an older version of cloud encryption, is no longer being sold, and the customers on that are over the next year or two will be migrated over to the cloud encryption. So it does the same function of data at rest encryption, but it's done so with a different technical means, which is going to actually speed up your clone time and some other benefits. So,
all right.
And then column level encryption, this is where we're actually going to encrypt the values that are being written into the database itself. So this is kind of taking it beyond that encryption of just everything, the encryption on the volume itself. In this case, now, when you hit submit on a form, for example, the platform is going to say, oh, these fields are supposed to be encrypted, and it will encrypt those values and write them into the database. And so that kind of gives you some additional layers of protection against, I mentioned things like supply chain, right? If you did, because I say Vault is for people who ask what if, right? If you did have some concern, for example, that maybe our internal controls are not what they should be, for example, and how do I know that somebody at ServiceNow can't view my data? This would be an additional layer of control, right? Because maybe a person could log in to that database server, but if they started making queries, they're still just going to be getting encrypted values up here, right? And so, I think that we have strong controls in that area, but like I said, Vault is for the people who ask, well, what if? And so, any what if you can put around there. And just like with the cloud encryption, you can also bring your own key with this, and you can rotate these keys. And what's nice here is you can even have different keys for different kinds of data. So I could say, all of let's say, I don't know, like if I thought maybe I had medical record IDs, maybe I want to encrypt those with one key that gets rotated every month, whereas other types of fields, I want to say I'm going to encrypt those with a different key, and we only do that quarterly, for example. That sounds complicated to me, but the point is you can do it if you want to.
Yeah, and again, on the same lines, right, Kevin, it would be like the customer managing those keys, like if they're getting the keys, and it will be an overhead. Again, if they are going down that path, isn't it? I mean, managing their own keys. So
exactly, and it actually, we split the key management access control away from the platform admin role too. So there's a separate KMF admin role, key management framework, that can control the key rotation. And if the admin or security admin roles do not have that extra role, they are locked out of that key management. And similarly at the field level, if they don't have the role or whatever the module access policy defines for that particular field, the admin is also prevented from doing a background script and writing a glide record to decrypt those fields as well. So it's a pretty good system.
Nice.
It's almost like having two different access control layers, because when you view a record, there's your access control list to say, do you have access to view this record, and here are the fields and everything. And then a second one looking at, okay, does Ishan have permission to use the key which decrypts some of these fields? And so, and if you don't, then the platform just won't display those to you at all. So that can be helpful. I gave a demonstration at Knowledge where like an administrator logged in, and admins, they've got access to everything. They kind of have to, right? But we did not give them the module access policy rights to view like first name, last name, and stuff like that. So they were able to go in and do their job, but not be exposed to that information that they honestly probably don't want to be responsible for anyways, if they can help it.
Yeah. Nice.
And Jared and Kevin, so can we actually generate these keys automatically? Because what if a client forgets to generate a key, say 30 days after it's, I mean, usually the customers would want to have these keys generated automatically or be integrated with one of their own systems. Is there a possibility to do that as well?
Well, so you can choose to either have ServiceNow generate or you can bring your own. If you bring your own, we're really just looking for 256 random bits, and we don't care where you got them. Yeah, so some people want to use their own HSM because they want assurance that it was done according to their standards. Other people just open SSL or even just RAND and pipe it into a file or something like that. Ultimately, whatever you're satisfied with. I think the easiest way is to have us do it. But I understand some people, prefer to generate their own, and it's all about helping you to meet whatever your specific requirements are and prove to an auditor that you are doing it that way.
And there is a feature that to remind you to do so. So if you're using a ServiceNow generated key for cloud encryption and also, I believe, column level encryption, you can schedule that key rotation to be done on a particular interval. If you're bringing your own key, that same utility can send out a reminder to a group of people saying, hey, your policy is rotate every 6 months. It is time to do so. So yeah, we now have that built into the platform.
That's helpful. Thanks, Jared.
Absolutely. And I'll bring up a quick reference slide. You were asking about database encryption. So yeah, database encryption is the legacy. It is all database encryption customers have been reached out to coordinate transition and set the expectation, but all new customers will be on cloud encryption. And yes, this is also separate from edge encryption. If you're familiar with that or heard of that particular product, that's a completely separate beast. That's separate from Vault as well.
Mm. Let's see. Okay.
Yeah. Any other questions? Because next up, probably the number one product based off of if I scan back the last 3 months in email, it's going to be the most questions that I get is around data privacy. How about you, Kevin?
Yeah, I hate to say that because I don't want to hurt any product manager's feelings or anything like that. But yeah, I would say at Knowledge, data privacy was the belle of the ball. It was the one that everybody was asking the questions about and everything. So data privacy, this simplifies the process of finding, classifying, and anonymizing private information. So it can search your environment for PII, personally identifiable information that can be linked back to somebody and then permanently remove those values from a database. And I really like this in lower environments in particular, right? Because this capability ensures that you aren't exposing that personal information to employees that need full access in that environment, but don't need real personal information. So like developers, for example, right? I can't have you develop in a subprod and not give you full access to everything, but you don't really need to know, Kevin Thompson, who lives at this address and this phone number and stuff like that. And again, you probably don't want to be responsible for that information either. So this is a way then that we can redact that information. Similarly, if you're hiring external developers, now I'm like sharing customer data with another company, for example. So that does also introduce some additional risk in that area, right? So these data privacy capabilities, again, use cases around insider threat, accidental exposure, supply chain risk, Gen AI leakage. Again, if we're taking steps to prevent this data from even getting into the platform, then we can ensure, this is, again, how could I prove to an auditor, for example, that, this was not used to train like a large language model, for example. So, Jared was kind of zooming in here, right? A company can redact things like names and addresses and phone numbers, and you could do that in production. So in production, for example, the example that I give is whenever you have those fields that someone can type anything into, like say email to case or something, if you can put anything in there, they start to put everything in there. And so you'll have people, and I'm sure, we're all developers here, right? So surely
Yeah.
you've experienced where you've just copy pasted out of terminal and then you realize, oh no, my API key was in there or something like that, right? Those are the kinds of things that happen. Private data has a way of kind of sneaking into places that you didn't plan for it to be there. So data privacy has tools to help you find that with data discovery. You can define these patterns and say, I want you to search through my tables and tell me if you're seeing those things. And then with data anonymization in production, you can just say, I want to like X those out. So I might take like a task, for example, and say, you know, I'm trying to think of an example like, hey, there's a card. I have a charge on my credit card. I think it was fraudulent. My credit card number is yada, 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 right? They put that in there. And then you can go and yeah, exactly what Jared's got up here. We can just replace part of that, for example, but leave the rest of the information that was in that field so that you can still get the context of, hey, what is it that Harneet is trying to ask for in this request, right? And then going down into subprod, you can make this part of your clone process to say, like, I want to replace all of the first names in here with just the word first name or just the word last name, for example. And so then now you can have that full access, but not exposing you to genuine customer information. Yeah, Jared, anything you wanted to add to this?
Yeah, the one thing I really like calling out from this earlier slide is, Ishan and Harneet, you've probably done similar. You've started to build your own version of this, searching things through regex.
Yes.
The clone example is really common, where customers will either just set up a whole bunch of tables to be excluded from clones. That's kind of like the entry level data protection. Just make sure none of it gets down there. But then the developers are losing out on valuable sample records, all those different relationships. So when you're setting up flows and scripts to dot walk multiple levels and coalescing data, you're losing out on a lot of those relationships in your subprod instances. So this is a more graceful version of that. And then that build versus buy conversation, what previous crude versions that I started down that path years ago, it was just the base regex. But what we have here is all date time stamps are not created equal, right? Like it could be, this email was sent on this date. We don't want to sanitize that version, but if it's near of the phrase of DOB or near, if it's a daytime looking thing that is near the word birthday, then yes, we do want to count that as sensitive. So that's some of that advanced logic that has gone into this particular product. I'll call back out on the, there's the subprod version where it will sanitize, it'll go through in the post-clone cleanup script section and we'll run through all of that. And as we put out updates, you'll of course get all of that. But again, the next level is just blanking out certain columns without the regex, right? Just blank out all first names. But here in the email, we can gracefully find and replace. And that way, if you did know the full credit card number, you could say, yeah, the one ending in 4448. And again, the right to be forgotten, that GDPR rule, that is the primary production use case of this. So we're not sanitizing an entire table or millions of rows. We are targeting going into sysuser, for example, and blocking out their personal email address, their personal phone number, whatever you have it configured to do. And again, back to that first slide of we want to do the right thing at the right time and be able to prove it. So that's all baked into this product as well.
And I think I'm able to very much relate to this because my existing client is a banking client, and we basically exclude all the tables where we have got a lot of sensitive information, because again, we are implementing FSO for them, and most of the information that comes into the FSO module is all sensitive. So we had occurrences where we had excluded some of the tables but forgot the other ones, and obviously the relationship broke. Some of the data was actually brought back into the lower environments, and obviously this suite of application would have really helped us to avoid that.
Yeah. And I think that's tougher for things like user acceptance testing. For example, when I say like, hey, I want to show you what this looks like, but I don't have any data to show you what it's going to look like, for example. Or another example that Jarod and I have talked about is, like let's say you replace all the first names with the word first name, right? Well, if you don't have, like, say, special characters, maybe you've written your code and you didn't take into consideration that some people have got, like, an accent mark in their name, right? Or international characters. And I think that's another one that we as developers, I think we've all been bitten at one point or another by UTF-8 characters, and so, now I'm not going to say where this is, right? And I'm going to use the safe harbor statement, right? So please make any purchasing decisions based on the product as it exists today. But on the roadmap somewhere is actually synthetic data replacement, where instead of saying I'm going to replace all of the first names with the word first name, it's actually going to replace it with randomly selected from a library of first names, so that you can actually include in your testing things like, do we have the proper support for things like special characters? And it makes that user acceptance testing so much nicer when you say this is what it looks like, and it looks like real names and real addresses and stuff.
That is a really amazing use case, Kevin, because we basically do that. We alter the text using what's it called, the fixed scripts. So once the clone has been completed, we actually use a fixed script to do that. But again, if ServiceNow does it automatically, with replacement strings automatically generated by ServiceNow, I think this will be a really good feature for most of the customers, most of the banking side customers that I work with anyway.
Yeah, as somebody who's done a bit of development work, I'm actually more excited about that really than anything else, because I've just been, I've been burned by international characters before in names,
spaces and
not coding
and
for it.
hyphens.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh boy, we're like halfway through time and we've only gotten to like the second item on here. We need to pick it up.
No, I was just noticing that the next couple up will go pretty quick. So I think we'll still have some time towards the end for open Q&A. But the next one up is ZTA. We're building, if you've heard of adaptive authentication, this is some advanced features on top of in that space. So Kevin, what do you love about ZTA?
So this is about enforcing that least privilege access control and the continuous trust verification based on the unique features of a user's login session, rather than just using a blanket rule that denies access. So, we used to say, like, okay, you're either on a trusted network or you're not, and you're either able to log in or you're not. And if you're not on a trusted network, you can't log in. So it was an all or nothing approach.
For interactive and API calls, it was all in that same bucket.
Yeah. So this can help ensure that only authorized users from verified devices can access specific applications and data, and it minimizes the attack surface by adapting identity verification and dynamically reducing access privileges. So we're taking some access back based on things like IP address and location and device. So an example, let's say you have a person who works in human resources and they have access to employee personal information when they're using a company-owned device at work. And they can still log in from home on their personal device to use something like Employee Service Center, but we don't want them to be able to view that HR application when they're at home and on a personal device. So we'll take back some of their access rather than taking back all of their access. So you would still have the access you need to, put in tickets, for example, or look up knowledge base articles or something like that. But we're going to say, on the HR data, though, let's wait till you're back in the office on Monday using your work computer.
Yeah, so back in the day as a Windows admin, I had a da.jarod account, I had an admin.jarod account, and a regular Jarod account, right? And in that way, to minimize the roles of each of those, right? So my standard email account didn't have all the things. So this, I look at this as kind of the ServiceNow equivalent of that, where we don't have to go down the administrative overhead of, for example, issuing this person 2 accounts, one for their HR at work role and one for their home roles and all that things. We can just dynamically reduce the roles that are accessible, and actually ServiceNow on the employee instances, the stuff that we use internally. One of the future now on now stories involves zero trust access and they're not going through the fulfiller access at first. They're doing these sysadmins at first, and controlling from where these instances can be administered from, but still leaving it flexible and open for employees to access, to log in and look at the vacation schedule or submit a ticket to the IT department.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So what's next? I think we were going to go to log export service next.
We can jump forward to log export. We do have a couple of the niche specialized products that are part of what makes Vault great. Secrets management has two really cool primary use cases for that.
Oh yeah. I mean, so secret management, I think of this in like ITOM discovery, for example, in very sensitive environments where you want provable assurance that ServiceNow employees have zero access to those stored credentials. So if you think about like if you were doing ITOM for network-based discovery as opposed to like agent-based discovery, you've got to put the Windows admin password into the platform. Okay, and I mean, I think of all the sensitive data that you have in instance, we always tend to think of like, it's the names and the addresses and stuff like that. And I'm like, no, I'd say the local admin password for all your endpoints is more sensitive than that. So I want assurance that nobody at ServiceNow could access that. And so one of the things that this has is we call it client accessible secrets, where you can actually encrypt those passwords with a key that we just don't get. And then you don't give us that key. And what you're storing then is that encrypted value. And when it's time to run a job, we push the code down to the mid. We push that encrypted value down to the mid. The mid is what would actually unwrap that and use the credential. And now we're back to, okay, how could I prove to an auditor? And I mean, prove it. Like, how could I mathematically to an auditor that ServiceNow doesn't have access to this password because I didn't give them the key?
And the second use case is kind of a in between that, the hammer, the extreme example that Kevin displayed. But let's say in your prod instance you have 10 people with the admin role, but let's say you only wanted to have 2 of them have access to your SAP credentials and 3 of them access to your cloud-to-cloud credentials, right? With Azure, Amazon, whatever other cloud systems you're going to be discovering and orchestrating. So with this secrets group with criteria is what the feature is called. For things that are stored within the instance, you can further lock it down and again take that out of the admin role and turn that into something that again using those KMF delegated roles and access policies, you can further limit the scope of what the generic admin role has versus these more specifically created roles.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
I think code signing is kind of related to secrets management in that it again has to do with cryptographically signing something. So in this case, this is giving you greater assurance that code running on your mid server hasn't been tampered with. So we talked about the passwords going to the mid server. Now we're talking about the code going to the mid server. So in this case, again, I'm thinking about like an ITOM customer being able to digitally sign code that runs on their endpoints so that the mid server would reject those jobs if it didn't come through the proper channel, for example. So I mentioned. Oh, go ahead, Jarod.
Harneet, you mentioned banking, and some of the large banking customers that I've worked around the world have a ton of legacy databases internally. So that JDBC connection, the data sources that's reaching out through the mid to synchronize data, there's a lot of valuable data coming and going through those mid servers. And so one of the top features that I've talked to customers of this particular feature is protecting, making sure those JDBC statements don't get rewritten either accidentally or maliciously in production, that any changes of that come up through dev and test and are properly digitally signed through this code signing feature.
Mm-hmm. And I said earlier, right, that Vault is for the people who ask what if. How could what if this code had been altered in transit? Now, obviously, the code being pushed from the platform to the mid, it's protected by TLS. But there have been instances in the past where particularly sophisticated actors have been able to get access to one of the root certificate authorities and issue certificates that would be trusted by your browser that can say whatever they want. So how could I ever have assurance that someone has not acted as a man in the middle and altered the code as it's being pushed from the platform down to my endpoints? And this is that additional layer of protection, because we've digitally signed that code. If someone did make alterations to it and then forward it on, the ECC firewall is going to reject that code. So it's that additional layer of security for the people who ask what if. And I think this is a perfect example, right, of how I talked about we have a really secure platform, but some people want to go beyond that. This to me is really like going well beyond that, because they're being honest. There's not a ton of customers who are concerned about a man in the middle attack, for example, of the code being pushed from the platform to the mid server, but some do. And so that's where something like this comes into play.
Nice.
I think one of the use cases that I was able to relate to the secrets management just a bit earlier was we actually integrated the environment with HashiCorp. Again, it's a secret management vault.
Yep.
For all our ITOM discovery. So for the same bank, we were actually doing the ITOM discovery for their cloud infrastructure. And obviously, being bank, they didn't wanted us to store the credentials in the platform. And I'm not 100% sure if this product was available 2 years back, but then we had to actually integrate with the HashiCorp Vault. At the moment, it's still running, wherein we connect with the HashiCorp Vault with the key that we store in ServiceNow, and obviously that basically passes it into the actual credentials, and that runs the discoveries and brings back the details into the platform. But,
this came out in Tokyo. So 2 years ago, we would have been really kind of on the edge of maybe it was out, maybe it wasn't. And that what you described, that's how people have been solving this problem, right? Is using something like HashiCorp Vault. HashiCorp Vault's a great product. I think it's fantastic. Not everybody wants to buy that if they don't need to. If this is my only use case, I might prefer to just use ServiceNow's approach to this rather than buying a whole other service from a whole other vendor and all of those pieces.
Exactly. And this is a bit bigger than just the secret management, right? Because when I first heard the term ServiceNow Vault, I initially thought it's more to store your secrets in a specific vault and obviously access when required. But the whole suite of applications, as we've seen so far, it's much bigger than that. So
yeah, I've heard that too, and I don't know, it's too late to change the name, I guess. And then the last component was the log export service. And when I brought up log export service, I've already mentioned log export service once, because I said we have several out-of-the-box tools. I mentioned Security Center, Access Analyzer, and log export service as free tools. So log export service, I say this helps you gather real-time forensic quality logging of the events in your ServiceNow instance, which you can use for performance monitoring and detecting security incidents and stuff like that. And me, as a former incident responder, I know I already said that that data anonymization is maybe one of the ones I'm more excited about, but this is I'm always going to have a soft spot in my heart, because as somebody who used to do computer incident response, right, logs are the lifeblood, right? I'm trying to build the almighty timeline. So an example I might give around this is let's say Harneet, you're an admin, right, and Ishan comes to you Monday morning and he says, hey, you know what, I had to do a password reset to get into my instance, and then when I got in, I saw some things that I know I didn't do. I know I had access on Friday afternoon, but I think somebody might have breached my account over the weekend. And so now as an incident responder, right, I know I want to build the almighty timeline. Everything comes down to the timeline. What was done with this account? Who logged in with this account? What records were viewed? What records were changed? Did anybody else log in from those same IP addresses? And to do that, you got to have logs. And unfortunately, from my time as an incident responder, I also know that most organizations find out about breaches 9 months to 2 years after the fact. And so, I one time I got engaged. I love this story. I got engaged where somebody was like, hey, we think that this employee left and took a copy of our, of the customer list, and now they're selling to those customers. And, we want you to do a forensic examination of that. And I said, okay, well, how long ago did this person quit? It was 2 years ago. Okay, well, do you have any logs from then? No. All right, well, did you save their laptop? No, we didn't do that either. I'm like, what am I supposed to do here? So your incident responders want logs. This is a great way of automating that collection. Log export service, you can actually get this. There's a free tier, so it's really priced off of the amount of just the volume that you're pulling in. So for 500 gigabits a month, you can pull that in at no charge, and then there's additional SKUs that you can use to up the throughput. If you buy Vault, we just give you unlimited. So that's Vault is part, or log export service. It's like there's part of it that's in Vault, but I really do kind of think of it as a separate thing that just, again, everybody should be using this. As an incident responder, I say, grab the logs. They're text files. They compress really nicely. Stick them on a server, compress them, save them forever, so that when somebody comes to you, some regulator comes to you and says, hey, I want to know about a thing that was happening 4 years ago, you can say, no problem, I got the logs.
Exactly. One of the
I get passionate about this one.
And yes, this is probably the number 2 amount of emails in my inbox over the last 3 months is questions about, can I hook it into this particular remote system? Can I do that? And out on the SN Devs community, one of the top questions I get about this product is, can I play around with this in my PDI? And unfortunately, the answer to that is no as of today. But I haven't heard anything specific on the roadmap. I do know that there's some evolutions coming maybe by this time next year. I may have a different answer for you on that. But yeah, Kevin's right. We want those organizations that want to get those logs out of the syslog table, the transaction table, things like that. This is a near real-time, get it into whatever system your enterprise security people are throwing all their other logs into. So it's that Kafka protocol, Kafka compatible method to do that.
Or you can push them to your mid server, and then you can have like an agent running on the mid server. Like if you were using Logstash, you could just grab them that way too. So
Yeah,
very flexible.
I mean, yeah, sorry, Jared.
Oh, I was gonna say, Ishan or Harneet, have you? This summer is actually going to be my 10th anniversary of being on the ServiceNow platform. 10-year anniversary of me getting my first admin account, and so a story from back in the day was just trying to figure out exactly what I could do with that admin account, and going in and using Glide Record and trying to change things in syslog. Right? We, like 5 years ago, 10 years ago, you could easily do things like that. Now, one of the shout outs I like in the free tier is a plugin called the Protected Tables plugin that gives you an extra layer of protection on those critical tables, primarily syslog, but to prevent tampering into sysaudit, syslog, things like that.
Nice.
Or even just alerting on stuff like Harneet impersonated somebody and saying like, okay, we want the security department to just real quick, did you have a change ticket for that, or was there a support ticket, or why did you do it? And just that little bit of like letting everyone know that, hey, we're going to ask some questions if you impersonate someone.
Yeah, I mean, in the legacy environments as well, right? Like monitoring or going through those logs when an issue comes up is a very big hassle as well, because if you want to go through those long text files and search for some keywords, and that way, I mean, if we can get it in this dashboard, and straight away we can go to, okay, the error was found at a certain point, or there was a warning, or we can I think we can set up the dashboard and analytics according to our requirements, isn't it? Let's say impersonating or maybe whatnot. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, and a lot of times when you're doing that level of research, the whether you're troubleshooting integration or some user transaction, you're going to end up digging around in the node logs, right?
Yeah.
And those have everything. Those are a gold mine, but it's such a high friction point to get access to those node logs. And so my favorite feature of LES is, yes, you can actually stream data from the node log into your external system, or like Kevin mentioned, just make it more accessible to you, so you don't have to go through the node logs on 8 different production instance nodes, right? So it's that's my number one. That's my value of the data.
So just, being mindful of time, but, earlier on, the question came up of, what is the right order to implement these things? And I said, step one is to make sure that you're doing those basic ones, the security center, the access analyzer. And I said log export service. So that would be your first of your Vault components then that you're implementing. And then we said that cloud encryption is the second one, because it's just so easy. You put in that request, and then after that. So that's why I said I do have an opinion about the right order to do these in up to a point. And then after that, it turns into a discussion about, well, what were your needs and why was it that you specifically decided that you needed Vault, and then prioritizing from there.
Yeah. We're getting ready to publish out on the Now Create site, if you're familiar with that, a recommended implementation sequence. So let's say you purchase Vault. Here's some things to consider exactly down that line. Are you purchasing Vault to get access to zero trust access and cloud encryption? Okay, let's prioritize those. As of right now, out in the customer face, I work more with the implementation of our customers. We have quite a few Vault customers out in the world, but I'm not aware of any customer that has implemented all 6 areas in production. So it is an a la carte. It is every customer's security stance is slightly different.
Yeah, I'd be surprised if anybody ever implemented all of them, because it's kind of like going to the buffet and saying, I'm going to eat one of everything on the buffet, right? It's not everything is for everyone.
It more depends on the use cases as well, right? If the customer is actually implementing those specific modules in the platform, then probably they might prefer, say, the secret management or the code signing as a modules.
Yeah, so just one thing, I mean, Jared, just on your point that like we purchase the Vault. I mean, the things that we've discussed, some of them would just be coming with when we get our instance, right? So is it like do we have to, let's say if I'm getting a ServiceNow Vault ServiceNow instance, some of the items are coming on to me automatically, or I still need to get a hold of that from a Vault's perspective?
Yeah.
So you're asking, like, if you have if you've licensed Vault, right? So I mean, then it's when you go through the implementation docs, right? You'll have to assign a few roles around and stuff like that. But some of the things like the platform encryption and the data privacy and stuff like that, those will just be in there. I think data. Well, I know LES, that's a plugin that you install. I want to say that data anonymization is also a plugin that you would install.
Yeah, they're all going to be store plugins, except for cloud encryption, which is done on our data center automation side. But yes, they're not going to get accidentally turned on as soon as you add this to your account. Right. It's all coming in through those same entitlements for the plugins and store apps, just like everything else.
Nice. No, that helps.
This was really interesting to know about all these products, and I think most of us are excited about the new releases. I think people at Knowledge were really excited about knowing what's coming up in the upcoming releases, and I think there are a lot of changes that are happening in the backend on the platform, a lot of things being brought up for the developers, but then I think the audience would want to know as well if there are any new key features that are coming up from a ServiceNow Vault perspective in the upcoming releases.
Yeah, I think I can talk about a couple of them here. And again, right, that reminder, safe harbor, make your purchasing decisions based on the product as it exists today, right? But one that I already mentioned was the synthetic replacement. I mentioned I'm really excited about that one, being able to say I want to replace these first names or last names, or with something that looks real, even if it's not real. So that one we mentioned. Another one that's on the roadmap is for real-time data anonymization. So this is saying right now with the the data classification, or I'm sorry, the data discovery and the data anonymization, you run it on tables of data that's already been saved into the database. So we're moving towards being able to say, I want to prevent this from getting written into the table in the first place. And so, and I really like that because, obviously just from the privacy perspective, but again, I always go back to what can I prove to an auditor, right? How could I prove to an auditor that, say, a person's credit card number was never used to train a large language model like Now Assist or something like that? Well, if the data never made it into the database in the first place, that's about as provable as you can get that it didn't get used to train that. So I'm excited about that. And then another one that's coming that I'm excited about is Access Observer. And so this is kind of taking Access Analytics, right? I'm getting my names confused. So we have Access Analytics, which not Access Analyzer. Thank you. I'm like, what is the name of that thing, right? So that's out now. That was one of the free ones that I mentioned earlier, which you can use to say, I want to compare Harneet and Ishan and see how does their access differ and stuff like that. But if I want to make changes to ACLs or changes to those encryption policies and stuff, what I can do with Access Observer is actually say, I want to monitor this field for a period of time, like an hour, a day, or a week, or something like that, and get a record of who is accessing it, what scripts are accessing it, and that kind of thing. So then I know when I'm planning those changes to the ACLs, these are the stakeholders that need to be able to access that when I'm done. Or also be able to say like, hey, these people should not be accessing it, and yet they still are. I got a thing that needs fixing. So those are both coming soon, and I'm excited about those three things.
I think that's another use case that we face daily, right? When we go live with something or the other breaks, like people lose access, or some unwanted people get the access. So that will be a great addition as well. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm sure the product managers that own those are going to be really excited to hear that. So.
All right. I think we are on time, and yeah. We don't have, so I just noticed on the side when we were having the stream, so somehow LinkedIn plays around with the stream every time, and the LinkedIn the event that we created previously was overwritten by a new one, and that's where the stream was going on. So
oh no. Well,
yeah,
hopefully it made it onto YouTube anyways. So.
Yeah, we have made out to all the platforms, Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube, but the audience that have might have marked it as an attendee, but would not get notified. So yeah. Anyways, but it was a good. But there will be recording, so it should be good for them.
Well, if you are watching the recording right now, I just want to say thank you so much for watching to the end, because I know I never get around to watching the recordings of old things. So thank you so much for coming here and watching this.
Yep. All right. Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Jarod, for joining us today. And it was great insights. So hope to see you soon.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for inviting us. I really appreciate it.
Yeah.
See you around the community.
Thanks, Kevin.
Bye.
Take care.
Really good to have you both. And yeah, obviously I've learned a lot as well. So again, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone.